Scroggins. I'm the director of the Natrona County Public Library in Casper, Wyoming. Prior to coming here, I was a library director in Texas. And so, yeah, that central time zone is stuck in my head. But here I am 5 years in Wyoming and absolutely loving the Rocky Mountain region. So I'm going to just share today about one thing that the Natrona County Library did during the pandemic to provide services to our patrons. But a little advance warning, sadly, in the middle of all of the pandemic and the cool things we were doing, it seems as if nobody on my staff, myself included, thought to take any pictures. So this is a verbal presentation only, which means it's going to be whippity snappy, super fast. So this will be the quickest flash of lightning in these lightning rounds. But I've heard it said that the best preparation for tomorrow is doing your very best you can today. And in my 14 years as a library director, I can honestly say that never once, even for half a second, did I even begin to imagine that I would need to prepare to close my public library for 71 days. And nor did I ever consider what kind of a ripple in the pond effect that doing so would create. And I'm sure that, like me, a lot of you felt super unprepared for this pandemic. I mean, we talk about emergency preparedness, but nothing to this level that I had ever, any trainings I had ever set in. So I'm sure that we were all feeling equally unprepared for this, but I will say it's that adage I was sharing earlier, doing our best every day really did prepare me and my staff, because what we needed to be able to do during a pandemic was to handle the fluidity of all these situations, to think appropriately and to consider multiple sides. And that's kind of what we do every day, dealing with the public. So, you know, we were thinking about staff, self-care, rethinking job duties, sanitizing, quarantining, all these different issues that we were all thinking about. And so it forced us to step a little outside of the box. And so we started brainstorming, what can we do to continue to impact our community? Our doors were shut, the staff was still working. Initially, we were all working here in the building, but eventually we transitioned to a lot of us working from home. And at the back of our minds, we kept thinking, what can we do for our patrons? And so one of the things that a lot of libraries did that we weren't able to do was offer curbside services. I was a little jealous of all of you libraries who could do that. I just didn't have the capacity and staff to be able to make that happen. But I thought about those
Oh, she muted herself.
Lisa, you're muted.
Oh my gosh, I've been muted that whole time?
No, just for a minute, just for a second here.
I don't even know how that happened. Okay. So we were thinking, how can we take that cool idea of having curbside services and make that work for a library that didn't have quite enough staff to make the curbside work? So we decided, I thought, what about a drive-through? Could we do a drive-through here? And so when I first pitched that idea to my staff, because I'm a big believer in collective wisdom, and as we were looking at things, it was just a series of brainstorming sessions with leadership, with managers, and then with the entire staff. And everybody kind of thought that is never going to work, but we did make it work. So we have at our library a drive-up book drop. So we got to thinking, people are used to driving in this one area to drop off books. What if we took our 10 by 10 pop-up tent? What if we took construction zone cones and made 2 lanes? And one would be for a drive-through and one would be for the book drop. And so that's exactly what we did. And it was hilarious when we were creating this, because we were talking through, we were all standing outside talking through how to make this happen. And we actually did a walkthrough or a drive-through practice. And so staff got in their cars and we're putting cones out and we have signage and we're trying to figure out where everything goes. But we did so just kind of at a hands-on drill practice, if you would. But we used our 10 by 10 pop-up gazebo. We used our bookmobile garage to stage all of the books. that we were using for holds pickup. So this was an opportunity for patrons to place items on hold and then have them picked up through this drive-through. So they browse our collection online, placed them on hold, staff pulled the items, staged them in the garage on tables. Of course, being librarians, we sorted them appropriately. A heavy-duty extension cord meant that we could do actual circs outside using laptops and our scanners. So we practiced, and here's what happened. Patrons put their books on hold. They were notified their books were ready using the system that we already use. They would drive up, hand their card to the staff, and then, of course, staff at that time, they were gloved up or whatever, using a lot of sanitizer, but they scanned it, pulled their items, opened up the back door or put them in the vehicle for them. So it was other than to pass the card back and forth, it was a fairly touchless situation. And it was really cool. It worked very well. And in fact, when we eliminated that as during our staged reopening, when the drive-through was eliminated, what started out as there's no way we can make this happen, feedback from my staff ended up being, why can't we keep this? Because the patrons love it. And we were able to provide a continuity of service. So it was really kind of cool. Of course, we couldn't keep it because the garage was for our bookmobile. So at some point it had to come and live back in the library. But I will say, as we faced what is probably the most large-scale disaster that any of us are ever going to face and impact the libraries, we can apply the things that we learned. And I promise myself, next time we do something really cool, we are taking pictures, because a verbal presentation, it really gets lost in the shuffle. But one of my biggest takeaways from this experience was that what we did during the disaster, it wasn't about the things, it was about reconsidering what best practices looked like. And so we realized that best practices changes. I don't know about you, but I've always thought they were kind of set in stone and pretty steadfast, but they're really not. Best practices changes. It changed during the pandemic. It changes as your community dynamics change. And so my big learning lesson is be prepared to be fluid in what you provide to your community. And we, as a profession, sometimes get a little static in our mindset because it's always worked and it'll continue to work. So yeah, we created a drive-through. People were able to pick up holds. They could place holds. They could still browse our collection and have access to our materials, even in the middle of the pandemic, which allowed us to continue to serve our community. I just have to say I have a phenomenal staff here in Natrona County, and they certainly used it as an opportunity to shine. So I told you that my lightning round session, because I have no pictures, was going to be the fastest session ever. I did try to see if I could find if somebody had pictures. I wanted to show you what it looked like. But anyway, that's what we did at Natrona County. I can't wait to hear what other people have done in their communities.
Thank you, Lisa. We do have, a few minutes here. If anyone has a question for Lisa, feel free to unmute and ask your question.
I've seen a lot of good idea, Lisa, and comments like that, but I haven't seen a whole lot of questions. MD says, thanks